You've probably heard that everyone's moving to Valencia. But what if I told you that the real story isn't about a city at all? It's about a moment most people recognize. Sitting at your desk, staring at a screen, answering emails you don't really care about, realizing your life works, but doesn't feel right. This isn't just relocation hype. This is the tension between who we are and who we think we could be. And it's quietly reshaping lives. Here's what most people get wrong. This video isn't about Valencia. It's about why so many people are confronting the same question. Could I rebuild my life somewhere else? And should I? Almost everyone watching this has felt it. That quiet frustration in your daily routine. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with alarms or crisis. It's subtle. A low-grade hum that follows you through the week. You get through the day. You answer emails, cook dinner, go to sleep at a reasonable hour. And yet, there's a flicker, a moment. Maybe while brushing your teeth or stuck in traffic or waiting in line, where a thought slips in. Is this really how it goes? Not because life is bad, but because it feels like something is slightly misaligned. Like you're living a version of your life, with the volume turned down. And that's what most people don't talk about. Before we go further, notice this. People moving abroad are not doing it because of weather or cheap living alone. Those are the headlines, the Instagram captions. But they're not the story. The real story is quieter. It's built on a question we all resist asking. Am I living the life I wanted, or the life I quietly settled into? And here's the uncomfortable part. If nothing is wrong with your life, why does it still feel incomplete? That's the paradox. You followed the rules, you checked the boxes, and yet something about the rhythm you've built doesn't feel like it belongs to you anymore. And this is why Valencia matters. Not as a destination, but as a reflection. The Valencia story resonates far beyond Spain because it offers something rare, a visible example of someone choosing differently. And when you see someone step out of the script, even just for a moment, it makes you wonder, could I do that too? This is the part no one tells you. Your restlessness isn't just about cost of living or lifestyle perks. It's about reconciling who you've become with the person you thought you might be. That's why people in London, New York, Toronto, even those who never cared about Spain, find themselves lingering on stories like this. Because it's not about where they're going. It's about what they're leaving behind. And this is where most people misunderstand what's really happening. Let's unpack the true pattern beneath the headlines. On the surface, the narrative sounds like this. So many people are moving to Valencia because life is better there. More sun, less stress, better work-life balance. It makes sense, right? But underneath, there's a deeper, quieter current. One that rarely makes it into Instagram captions or relocation blogs. People are leaving routines that suffocate them, not just cities that exhaust them. They aren't just chasing sunshine. They're chasing space. Space to think. Space to breathe. Space to live without feeling rushed. Space to wake up without anxiety. Being the first emotion of the day space to not feel behind all the time. Because for many, life in big cities, even successful lives, starts to feel like constant compression. Productivity becomes identity. Efficiency replaces presence. Moments blur. And over time, something quiet begins to ache. Not a dramatic burnout, just a soft but steady question. Is this all there is? And don't get me wrong, lifestyle plays a role. Terraces, sea air, affordable rent, they're part of the appeal. But the real leap is psychological. People aren't moving to Valencia. They're moving from something that no longer feels like their best version of life. Pause here. Let the words breathe. Minimal music. Stable shot. It's not always about running towards something better. It's often about creating distance from something that stopped making sense, even if it used to. Here's what most people don't admit. It isn't change they fear, it's regret. Regret for not trying. Regret for waiting too long. Regret for realizing too late that the rules they followed weren't designed with them in mind. And a slow, persistent regret is far more expensive than any plane ticket. Here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. So what's really at stake here? It's a tension that quietly shapes almost every major life decision, even if we don't realize it at the time. Security versus freedom. Security is safe. It's knowing your postal code, your salary band, your grocery store layout by heart. It's routine, structure, predictability, and in many ways, it's necessary. But security has a price, because freedom, true freedom, comes with uncertainty. Freedom means stepping into possibility without a map. It means trusting that the version of you who shows up after the leap will know how to navigate the unfamiliar. And here's the truth. Most of us want both, but life rarely gives them to us at the same time. Before we go further, ask yourself, quietly, honestly, where does most of my fear come from? Fear of loss, or fear of not becoming who I might be? That single question can redraw the entire shape of your decisions. This is where the Valencia example becomes universal. People don't just trade routines for adventure, they trade what feels safe but static for something that feels uncertain but alive. They're not chasing novelty, they're chasing feeling. And for many, that shift is deeply uncomfortable because risk feels reckless until you frame it as purpose. We're told to seek stability, to build solid careers, keep steady incomes, anchor ourselves. And that's not wrong until it becomes a cage. That's what's changing in so many people. Not their desire for success, but their definition of it. But here's the part no one tells you. Most people don't actually want to escape their lives. They don't want to burn it all down and start from zero. They want something much more nuanced. They want to recontextualize their life. Same values, different setting. Same skills, different tempo. Same person, new room to grow. That's why cities like Valencia become more than a location. They become metaphors, visible expressions of a quiet, personal rebellion. A recognizable vessel for a deeper transformation. One that doesn't scream for attention, but whispers, there might be another way. And if you're honest, which side have you been choosing lately? Because this is where many people realize something uncomfortable about how they've been living. Let's talk money, but not the way most videos do. Yes, a lower cost of living helps. And yes, it's easier to breathe when your rent doesn't eat half your salary. But let's be clear, incentive is not the same as motivation. Most people don't uproot their lives just to pay less for coffee. They move because the math of their life stopped adding up, emotionally. Here's what most people miss. People are willing to accept less status, less income, even fewer career opportunities, in exchange for more meaning. But only up to a point. Because while meaning doesn't pay bills, it quietly reshapes how we see everything else. It shifts our priorities. It redefines what we call enough. And it redraws our internal map of what a good life looks like. And this is where most people get confused. They think it's about cheaper groceries. But what actually shifts is something deeper. Instead of saying, Spain costs less, most people who move end up thinking, life feels more valuable here. If you're waiting for spreadsheets and rankings, this isn't that video. This is about why numbers alone stopped being enough for many people. Because eventually, Many realized that they weren't just spending money, they were spending time in ways that no longer felt meaningful. And time is the one currency you can't earn back. Before we go further, notice this. Value isn't the same as affordability. People who relocate aren't just chasing cost savings. They're chasing clarity, a sense that their resources, time, money, energy are finally aligned with what matters to them. And this is why some people go back home eventually. Not because life abroad was bad, not because the dream was fake, but because the move changed them, not their problems. That's the uncomfortable truth many don't talk about. Change of place doesn't guarantee change of mindset, but it can be a powerful catalyst if the mover is ready and honest. Now let's bring this closer to you. You clicked this video about Valencia, but part of you didn't really care about Valencia, let's be honest. Here's what you were really thinking, maybe unconsciously. What would my life look like if I rewrote the rules I'm living by? That's why this topic sticks. That's why it lingers long after the video ends, because it isn't just about Spain. It's about the quiet urge for something different. Not louder, not bigger, just truer. Before we go further, consider this. Have you ever imagined your life somewhere else? Not because you dislike where you are, but because you want to see what else you could be. That's the invisible gravity pulling people toward change. Not dissatisfaction, but curiosity. Not rebellion, but evolution. And here's where it gets interesting. The people who thrive after moving, they're not always the ones who are unhappy. They're the ones who realized they were complete, but not finished. They had grown as far as they could in the life they had. And that awareness, that honest, uncomfortable clarity, became the turning point. And that's a critical distinction, because this conversation isn't really about moving to another country. It's about granting yourself permission to change, internally or externally. So, let's confront a truth many of us avoid. You don't need to leave your home country to make the choice I'm talking about. You don't need a plane ticket. You need a decision. The fear of leaving blinds many to the real shift that needs to happen inside. It's the move from, what if I fail, to, what if I never tried? That simple shift from fear to possibility is the quiet catalyst behind every big life change. And yes, some people move. Some people book the flight, change the scenery, rewrite the story. But many others transform right where they are. They redesign their days. They challenge their habits. They adjust the lens through which they see themselves. That's the real insight most people miss. Not every new life begins in a new place, but every meaningful shift begins with the same question. What if I gave myself permission to want more? Let's bring this full circle. The story of people moving to Valencia isn't primarily a geographic story. It's a psychological one. It's about a growing desire for intentional living, a pushback against routines that feel hollow, the courage it takes to explore your own internal landscape, and the subtle realization that life is not infinitely renewable. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the location will fix their life. But what actually changes a life is clarity about what matters and commitment to pursue it. So before you think about packing a suitcase, ask yourself, what part of me am I leaving behind? And what part am I ready to become? That's the question people are really wrestling with when they consider moves like this. Not Valencia, not weather, not cost of living. Identity, purpose, fulfillment. So when you hear people say they're moving to Valencia, listen carefully. They're not talking about a place. They're talking about permission. Permission to live differently. And maybe That's what you've been needing too.